I forgot to unmute myself. Great, lovely. Yes, hello everybody online. My name is Chelfe. I will be the teacher for animating today. I forgot to unmute myself. All right, so this is Blender. And of course I need to turn on capture keys. Sorry about that. Let's do like this. There you go, you can see my mouse. So this is Blender. If this is your first time sitting in Blender, you haven't tried it before, then let us just quickly go over the navigations. So inside Blender, we use our middle mouse button for pretty much all navigation. If we hold it down, so click the middle mouse button, hold it down, we can orbit around the focus of our 3D space. It's very nice. If we hold down Shift and middle mouse button, we can pan back and forth, up and down, diagonally, to move things around to see our space a little bit better and how things look. And if we hold down Control and middle mouse button, we will zoom in smoothly. This can also be done with your scroll wheel, but it does it in steps, so that's a personal preference thing over anything else. So today we have a barrel, and we are going to animate on it. So to animate on it, we need to go out into our outliner, which is up here in the right corner, pick the armature, that's here, and with the armature selected, we have to go up into the left-hand corner and pick Pose Mode. This should make it so that the bones show through your object, like so. And these bones are our armature. This is our rig. This is what we use to animate on things in 3D. Now this is a fairly simple one, just set up with two bones, a top and a bottom. As you can see, they will control different parts of the barrel. Today, we're going to animate our barrel jumping. You can do it whichever way you want, left to right, right to left. Be a little bit creative with it. I think that's a good idea. So we'll be animating this barrel to jump. We'll be jumping forward, and we're going to go over a few of the principles that we use when we animate. So, down here in the bottom, we have something called our timeline. This is where we animate. So when we work with animation, we work with frames in general, and there's, like, rule of thumb, there's 25 frames to a second when we talk about animation or movies. For a lot of things it's less, or you'll have duplicate frames, but for today we'll work with 25 frames for a second as a standard. So we have this little blue pin. This is our time pin. This just dictates where we are in the time. And we can left click on it and drag it around if we want. And this time slider right now, mine's flickering a little bit, is set to 250 frames. So that's 10 seconds. It's a little bit too much because jumps don't last 10 seconds. So right above where it says 250, we can see that the end point of our animation here is set to 250. Let's turn that down to 100. This gives us a bit more than we need space to work with, and we can always change it later, but it's a good place to start. So I'm going to grab my bottom bone here, and I am going to press I. Pressing I brings up the insert keyframe. So keyframes are the things that dictate whether or not animations, well, not key, but keys are what dictate whether or not animation is happening. It's the stored action of it. And for this guy, we're going to do location and rotation. That's what I'm going to be showing. If you want to play around with the scale, you're welcome to also do scale. But I'm just going to be working with location and rotation today. So I'm going to set a key on those two. And as you can see, right now nothing's happening. But that's because this is the neutral pose. We want it to start here and then move into other things. Let me just, here we go. All right. So I want this to be held up until about frame 18. And of course, this is because I planned this out, so I know it's frame 18. And here I'm going to set the same key, location and rotation. There you go. So this just means this pose will be held between here. And the reason why I'm doing both of them is I can always go back to 0 if something messes up later. Now, let's see here. I'm going to move my time slider till frame 57. You really hear my timing here. And with the bottom bone selected, I'm going to press G on my keyboard. This will allow me to move things around. And Y to lock it to the Y-axis. And now I'm going to place it where I want my jump to end. So of course you can have a little bit of freedom here, move it the way you want it to. And I'm going to press I again, location and rotation. And now I can actually see my barrel move. If we press Shift and Space, this will play through our animation. And this is the reason why we shortened down our time slider, because if we didn't, it would have to run through 250 all the time. So there you go. So to begin with, we're just moving one place to another. And that's because we want our spacing to be correct. We want this to be the right amount of, distance, right? And the next thing we then can do is little before the middle of this movement. So I'm going to go to about frame 36. And now I'm going to press G again, but I'm going to press Z. So I'm going to move it up. And this dictates how, of course, how far up your barrel will jump. I'm going to do a bit low one. And we're going to key this again. Now the beautiful thing about animating in 3D now is that it interpolates our movement between keys. So if you've been doing the same thing that I've been doing, it will now move up. And then when it moves all the way to the side, it has the up movement in between them and will smooth between them. This is a lot easier than drawing every frame the traditional 2D way, because the computer is doing a bunch of things for us. This is a fairly mechanical, unrealistic jump right now, so we're going to add a bunch of personality and a bunch of appeal to it as well. Because there is a rule in 3D, and it is the action itself is not actually interesting. It's the wind up to it. So before you do something, before you jump, before you punch, before you dance, it's not the actual movement, it's everything before it and everything after it. So we got to add some wind up to our barrel so that it looks like it's crouching down and then jumping up. And when it lands, we're going to do a little extra oomph, because it hits the ground hard. I'm going to press Shift Space again to stop it from playing. And then I have these 18 frames here where I can start playing around with my top bone. So here, I'm going to select my top bone, and at frame 1, I'm going to press I, and here I'm only going to change the location. Or not the location, sorry, my bad. The rotation. Because, let me show you, we can't actually move this. It is locked to the lower bone. So all we can do is rotate on it. So, with that done, I'm going to go to frame 16, and I'm going to bend my barrel forward. Here we go. So I press R to rotate, and I'm just going to rotate it forward like so. We don't really care too much if there's a little bit of penetration. This happens very, very quickly. So you can cheat these things as long as it happens quickly. I'm just going to crunch mine together like so. Press I, put another key on rotation, and then we can press Shift Space to just see what this looks like. All right. This is getting quite well. Of course, this is the wind up. This is the preparation to jump. And let me just see if I have enough space. When animating, the best reference you have is yourself, and you will very often see animators do everything they do, or everything they're animating, they will actually act them out. There's an old joke that animators are shy actors. They don't like being in front of the screen, but they're really good actors a lot of the time. So if we're doing a jump like we are today, I know I'm jumping from here to there. And if I just jump standing, if I don't do any preparation, I'm not going to get very far. It's just going to be like that. It's not very interesting. It's kind of boring. It looks very mechanical. So instead, I want to do crunch down and jump forward. That's a lot more realistic. It's a lot more dynamic. And that's what I really want to get into the barrel. But doing that movement, I also realized another thing. The crunching down is a very slow movement. It might happen fast, but it's a very slow movement compared to the stretching out. So I know in this animation that I have 16 frames to my crunch down, but my stretch out needs to be a lot faster. So I'm just going to give it about I'm going to give it to frame 22, where I'm going to rotate it in the opposite direction. I'm going to press I, and I'm going to rotate. So now, if we play through that, we can see that that stretch out is very quick. And it's just going to give it a little bit more realism. All right. And we wanted to hold this up until we start hitting the ground again. So we're going to just check, where do I want it to start crunching up again? I want it to go about frame 50. I want it to start riding up again. So I'm just going to get it sort of straight again. Don't worry too much about getting it 100% straight, because that's actually going to make it look even more unnatural. If you get a little bit of variation, a little bit of value on the rotation, it's going to add that human feel that no two positions, no two poses are the same. So it's all right to be a little bit imprecise with this. I'm going to go like that. I, rotation. And let's see how that looks when we play through it. Boink. Boink. Yep, that's starting to look all right. And yes, making those sounds are mandatory, by the way. Animators, modelers, sculptors, we all make weird sounds when we're sitting and doing it for ourselves. So don't be shy about it. It's a-okay. So, all right. So I know my barrel lands at about frame 58. So there. So at about frame 57, 58, I now want this to crunch together again, because it's now landing. If you've ever tried to land with straight legs, you know how much that hurts. So we don't want to inflict that type of pain on our barrel. So we're going to have him crunch together a little bit to just receive that landing. We'll fix that later. Don't worry about it. To receive it, and then let him hold it a little bit before we zero him back out. There we go. I for keying. And now we can play through again. Let's see what this looks like. This is not bad. All right. So the next point here is, this is still kind of mechanical. It's still a little bit weird. It doesn't look quite right. And that's because we haven't played with our curves. Now, if you don't know animation, curves might sound a bit weird for you, but all these keys have curves. That is how they blend into each other. And we can edit those. And we edit those by changing our timeline, because right now we just have our timeline. These are just keys. We can't really see what they're doing. But if we go into the left-hand side of the timeline here, we can switch to what's called the graph editor. This can also be done by pressing F6, like so. And here we can see all the keys we've set in our scene. Now we haven't done entirely 100 frames, but giving a little bit extra to work with in case you want to do something extra, that's perfectly fine. So our navigation tools work in here as well, so we can zoom in and out. It has an extra dimension to its zooming that if you hold Control and middle mouse button and move to the side, you will stretch your curves out. And if you move them up, you will stretch them up and down so they get easier to read. You can see, like so. And yeah, so I don't have, because I have my notes on the other screen, for once I don't actually have the chat. But there's going to be some questions from chat. They're going to be asking some things, and we're going to be answering a little bit. Yes, come along, Christian.
So actually, this is more just like as a follow-up on that you wanted people to make noises when we animate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one in the chat is saying if Star Wars actors can make pew pew noises or lightsaber noises, you can make sound effects as well when we are animating. So I feel that is so
that
relevant.
is very, very true. We can.
And also, you told me a quite cool fun fact back in the days about animating that actually, when they removed the fifth finger from animating, that saved the studios millions of dollars.
It did. Yeah, so when they removed the fifth finger from things like The Simpsons and other things, it because they no longer had to animate that finger, they saved, like, on a week, they saved like $1 million.
Jesus Christ.
Because it took so long time to just get that extra finger, so removing it and removing all the time that needed to be animated just removed half the work time.
Yeah, and also along with that, four fingers did not cause any visual discomfort among viewers, I could imagine.
Exactly. We don't notice it at all.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's everything from the World Wide Web.
Yeah. All right. So this is our graph editor. It can be fairly confusing because you have all these graphs, all these curves going all the time. But don't worry too much about it. We can isolate these. So as you can see here, I opened up the bone, and now we can see the different curves for the different rotations, and also the locations, especially for the bottom bone. And we're going to start with the bottom bone. So what I want here is I'm just going to hide everything but the Z location and the Y location. So that's our up movement and our forward movement. Let's see here. And you can see here all these curves, they're blending into each other with this round, nice movement. And we don't actually want that on everything. So for example, for our forward movement, which is our Z location here, we actually want these to be linear. We want these to be straight. So I'm going to hold down left click, or my left mouse button, drag a complete selection over the 3 keys that are on our Z location. And I'm going to right click on them and find the handle type and set that to vector. Just going to leave that there so you can see what it is I'm doing. There you go. And that will then turn this movement into a linear movement, which means it doesn't have a speed up or speed down. It's just straight movement. Whoop. Something weird happening there. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So once that's done, I'm actually pretty much done with my Z location, so I can turn it off and then go back to my Y location. Now this one is our jump animation. And this curve doesn't look like a jump. It's very flat at the beginning and at the end, while a jump is this very quick movement through the air, but with a little bit of hang time in the middle. So we want to make sure that we have a hang time here, but not anywhere else. So I'm gonna grab my key on frame 18 here. Oh. Yep. And it seems like there's a little bit of needing of help here. Christian, do we have any questions from chat that we can answer while there's a helping round here?
Apparently, we may just have professional animators because chat seems silent. But do you know the story about getting Shrek'd back in 1996 by the animator?
I've only ever heard about it. It's a bit before my time, but I've only ever heard of it because it was Prince of Egypt, and then Shrek.
So bad performing animators would then be demoted, or as a punishment, be told to like, oh yeah, you're getting Shrek'd.
Yes.
That were being put on the animation team for Shrek, and they thought that Prince of Egypt would be like the next big thing. And I can tell you that as of today, the first 3 Shrek movies have made more than $2 billion across the market. So,
which is super sad because the Prince of Egypt movie is just absolutely beautifully made.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's amazing. But still kind of fun that Shrek then goes in and absolutely does a landslide, and then they're just like, oh,
yeah,
cool.
Oh yeah. But it's always weird like that.
But yeah, nothing to report here from the chat other than
I can drop. Animation's a bit. There's a lot of things to keep track of. It's fine. I get it.
Yeah. Hold on. Then we can do fun facts instead.
Yeah. Let me just quickly, Greg. I think there was somebody who needed help over there before. I saw a hand. Yep. All right. It looks like most people are getting there. All right. So I'm going to grab the first key of my jump animation here. This is the upwards movement. And you can see here it has these little handles. And moving these will actually change the animation. So think of every part of these graphs as a key, and that, but without there being a key, because that would be very heavy. But what we want to do is we actually want to take the left or the right one of these, and we want to move that upwards without moving the left one. So we'll take the first one, we'll right click on it, and we will find the free handle type. This will allow us to move these handles individually of each other. You can see now I'm only affecting one side of it, not 2 sides of it. And you can also see if I move this, it'll have this very funny curve on it. But what I want to do is I just want this to be a nice smooth curve up here. So it's this nice balanced curve on its way up. I think that's fairly fine. And then on the other side, I want to do the same process. So select the key, right click, handle type. You can also press V for the shortcut if you want to. There you go. Set it to free. And then we can move this one up as well. Now we can see we have a lot more soft curve where we have a bunch of hang time, and the up movement and the down movement are actually a lot quicker. But I can see here it's not quite quick enough. So we can actually select our final key on frame, what's that, 57? Let me stop the play. And we can move that. We can drag it around in our graph editor. If we hold down Shift, we will, stick it to one axis so it won't move too much. There you go. And we can change this so that it becomes a little bit quicker. So you see now I've moved it from 57 to 51. Yep. And we'll see if that looks better. It's a little bit better. There's a little bit of sliding now happening at the ground, but we'll, correct that. Actually, it's not too bad. Kind of like it. So that's fine. I think I want to make my hang time at the top a little bit more. So you can see just adjusting these curves so that they actually, the up movement becomes quicker and the hang becomes longer. Because remember, it's like going up is a very fast, you're accelerating upward very, very quickly. So that's a very quick movement. And the same with coming down. It's a very, very quick movement. And even move it up a little bit. Boink. Boing. Yeah, so that's starting to look better. But do remember, we've only worked on our bottom bone. We still need to change the timing and the curves on our top bone where we have a lot more on it. So I'm going to stop playing, going to select the top bone. Here we can see all of our keys on our rotations. Go ahead and hide the W by default. That's a quaternion node. We don't really need it for this. And then find our x-axis, because that's the one where we've done most of our animation on, like so. And I'm just going to scale mine up so that it becomes easier to see what's going on. There we go. All right. So all of these curves are right now default interpolated, and we actually want to start changing them around a little bit because they get a little bit, they're a little bit flat. The timing's not great on them. And it'd be great to have some of them holding a bit longer, some of them holding a bit less, so on and so forth. So we're just going to go in. I'm going to pick my first key here, actually my absolute first key, and I'm just going to make that longer so that the starting of the crunch is going to go slower. But I then want the release of this animation, or of the crunch, to be faster again. So crunch and boom. And when I say fast, I mean I want this to be real fast. So I'm going to select our third key, or our key on frame 22. I'm going to pull it so that the stretching out, the uncrunching of our barrel becomes a lot faster. You can see this curve pretty much just plummets vertically, and that's just going to make that pop a lot more, a lot nicer. Pop. Like so. Boop. And so I'm horrible at it. I do this all the time, just FYI. It's sometimes tempting to just drag the time slider like this. This is called scrubbing through your animation. This doesn't give you the correct timing, so you don't actually know if it looks right. So it is important to just play through your animation to see if it looks all right. It's a bad habit that most people will get into and then swear all the time because they do it. Doop, move. Let's see. I think, yeah. And then again, I want my return to normal and my crunch down again. So my removal of the stretch and my reaction to landing. I want those to be, I want the removal of the stretch to be a quicker movement, and I want the crunching down to be a lot quicker as well. So I'm gonna grab the key that returns our barrel to its regular position on frame 50. I'm gonna set its handle types to free, like so. And then its bottom handle, the one coming into it, I'm just gonna drag down like so, so that this animation actually gets held for longer. Then we can also see it stretches back a lot quicker, which is going to, again, simulate real life movement a lot more. And then I want the out of this one to be rounded as well. We can even give this a little bit of overdrive. like so. So now there's actually a little bit, so this would be the regular interpolation of it, just smooth in to the next one, to the crunch. But if we overdrive it, it's gonna do like a quick up down. I can just show. It's gonna quickly do like extra down before it goes back to normal. And that's just gonna look a little bit better. I don't know if everybody saw it. What I did was, if we overdrive it, it's gonna do a little extra crunch down before it crunches up. And that's gonna make it look a little bit better. It's gonna give it a little bit more oomph, a little bit more weight to the animation. All right. So let's look at this. And then we have the next key, which is our final little bit of rotation here. Have I gone too fast? Is everybody with? All right. All right, so we have our final key here, which I actually think I want to move and then make an extra key. So I'm just going to take our final key. I'm actually going to move it a little bit forward. I want it to be in front of our slide. Let's see. Down, slide, there we go. So I want to move this one forward, and then when our slide stops, but before it, returns to normal, I actually want to bend it back a little bit, as if it's just coming up, centering itself a little bit more after the landing. So I'm going to drag my time slider into frame, let's see, 65. Gonna rotate this backwards. Not a lot, just tiny, tiny, tiny bit. Press I, keyed on rotation. So here, there we go. And this is also, like, you don't have to set all your keys first. It just helps to have a lot of the basic movement before you start moving into the graph. It's tempting, and it's very like human habit, human nature to think, oh, well, I've set all my keys, this is all I get to work with. But it's a really good practice getting into, I can still set keys, I can still add more, I can add as much as I need to add to this and work with. So you can see now it's just getting that little bit of extra backwards movement before it settles back in. And that's sort of what we want to get. We want to get as much personality, we want to get as much anthropomorphizing of this barrel as possible, giving it a lot of human movements, mimicking human movements. So let me just zoom in here. So for this key, the one coming that's like stretching down, we want this movement to be a lot quicker. So again, I'm going to right click, free the handle type, and then the out node, I'm just going to not completely, I don't want this. I don't want this weird poing. That would be good for the up jump, but for this, it needs to be slower. It needs to be a human reaction. So I want this not quite to ease in, but just a little bit. So, and see, jump up, down, slide, a little bit back, then forward. That's fine. And then let's see here, this final part, what we need to do with that. All right. So let's look, see if there's anything more that needs a little bit of tweaking. And this is one of those arts where the more time you work with it, the better it will become. There are very few easy methods of getting this. And you should also feel like very free to like experiment, try things out, see what things works for you, what things don't work for you, what things do you like in your animation. I don't like the the first ping we did here on mine. Maybe yours looks better, but I don't quite like mine in the context of the rest of the animation. So I think I want to tweak that a little bit. Let me see here. So I think, let's see here. Let's try this out. Just gonna make this a little bit longer. There we go. And every now and again, you'll hit into like an animation thing where it doesn't quite look right. And one of the things that can make a giant difference is just a frame or two. Pulling a graph a little bit so that it's held for a frame or two is really going to help a lot with the look of your animation. And it seems so silly because it's 1/25th part of a second, but it just looks a little bit better. So, all right. Do we have any questions from people online?
Well, we had one from Moats, but that could be handled in the comment section.
All right.
But I can tell you, or I can tell everybody here in the class, because I found this very interesting. So if you go in and watch a Pixar movie, or just any animation movie, one frame, there's 24 or 25 frames per second.
Different places have different standards. Yes.
Exactly. But to render one frame takes about 24 hours from a computer. And if we were to make an entire movie back to back, so that means that we render one frame and then do another one, it would take 400 years to render one of Pixar movies as of right now.
Yes.
On
one computer.
On one computer, but they have like freaking...
Yeah, so they have 300 or 400 computers just sitting on. And it's also a little bit misleading because, of course, it's high quality renders, but they also render out different parts of the movie in different layers. And this starts to get very technical, and if you're not very used to it, you might not understand. But they'll do things like they'll do all the characters, but without the hair on one layer. Yeah. They'll do another layer with just the clothes. They'll do another layer with the hair. They'll do another layer with where everything is neon colors, so they can use it as masks. Oh, yeah. So there's a bunch of different layers. It's not just that single frame. It's a lot of different layers on top of each other that all need to be rendered out for every single frame.
But it's insane to think if we took one of these computers, which is like, all right, we're gonna render up, and it's gonna be like, all right, cool. So my great grandchildren is gonna be like, right, it's now been rendered ready.
Yes. Exactly. And that is exactly one of those things. And of course, that's changing now with things like Unreal Engine getting into final pixel quality, where we can real-time render things.
And that's insane. That's magic.
That is pretty damn cool.
But yeah, next time you go into the cinema and watch a Pixar movie, just 1 second, that took a lot of computer power.
A lot of computer power, a lot of computing time. Yeah. Let's see. Boop. And yeah, I'm just going back and forth, checking which things look good, which things don't look good. And I'm even trying different things out. That's very bad. Maybe moving that a little bit down. Nope, that looks even worse. And like going back and forth on these things, again, experimenting, trying things out. Your first thing might not be the best thing. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means try some other things out that you might like better. And let's just see here. Boop. Moving to that, moving to that. Do I want this a little bit quicker? Maybe. Nope, definitely not that. So, yeah, take your time, just sit and tweak things a little bit. Make sure they look right to you. There we go. That's a bit too much for my taste. No. And of course, different people have different tastes in animation. We have our teacher Halfdan, who has worked on a lot of animated movies and stuff like that. And he really likes very stylized animation. So a lot of exaggeration, a lot of hang time, a lot of sliding, a lot of reaction and anticipation until things before, like, you can do realistic animations as well. And that's a lot more downplayed a lot of the time. You still have to make it readable and understandable. There's a lot more downplayed, and that's just not really his aesthetic and his choices, his desires in animation. Of course, when you work on different projects, you'll be doing different things. Oh. All right. Yes, we have apparently questions.
Just one, but it can actually go quite far. But Jasmine in the chat is asking, if I had a human rig and a model, can I make them jump just like this? The sky is the limit. I was just about to.
Yes. So
you want the human rig to fly? Yeah, go for it. Right.
Yeah. So this is a longer talk, but
exactly that's why that's one fine. Question.
Yeah. Yes, you can, but you have a lot more elements to work with. So if you're doing a human body, right now we have a 2-bone rig, so that's equivalent to 1 leg without a foot. So that's just thigh and knee, or thigh and shin. So if you're doing a human, you need to do both legs, and you need to do the hip as well. Then you need to do the spine, you need to do the arms, where all of these things are working together to get the entire personality out. And that takes a lot more time. It's not something you can expect to rock out on 2 hours.
Yeah, so here at the start of this year, we started on animation. And holy cow, when you gave us the task of just do a walking animation, yep. I had never been so self-aware of how I was walking when I went home that day, because you're just like, use yourself as a reference. I'm just like, all right, okay, my hips are swaying a little bit. I'm just like, I gotta stay all right, yeah. Left leg forward, no, right goes that way. Just like,
yeah, there's this. So the book that we use and that I think most animators use is the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. And he has just some amazing stories about him looking at people and going, that's a funny walk cycle. And then following them to look more at it. He has this wonderful story about following a dude who is like, he walks very feminine. Why? Like, he didn't understand. He looked at the guy and went, I don't understand why this guy's walking feminine. But I definitely read his walk as feminine. And he follows him around for like 4 blocks in his car. So drives after him.
Just like slow, just like a slowly exactly, creeping car behind him.
Real creepy-ish. And it ends with him figuring it out when the guy turns a corner and there's a wall. So only the guy's head sticks up over the wall. And he realized that stereotypical male and female coded animations, men will move around a lot, but that's our whole body. We will be shifting our weight from side. Am I still in frame?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. We'll be shifting our weight from side to side. Our legs will be out to the side. And that's traditional. That's what you'll work with as archetypes, as a place to start off. If you really want somebody to culturally be read as male, you'll be having them moving like this pretty much. But females, they're very static. There's not a lot of up and down movement. There's a lot of forward. It's very elegant. It's nice. It's beautiful animation. And this dude was walking with his legs in front of each other, which means he doesn't move up and down when he walks. So that turned, and for a seasoned animator who was used to looking at walk cycles in how they're coded, if somebody doesn't walk like our typical males, it suddenly became very feminine because the head was stuck. The head was pretty much locked to one axis. And it's just a really interesting story because you start realizing these things when you animate. You start realizing how weird human locomotion is and how weird we read human locomotion, because there's a lot more into it than just one foot in front of the other. How we put one foot in front of the other has a lot more to do with it. It's a lot of personality. It's a lot of what we call appeal in animation terms. So, and it's so wide. It's so interesting to just go into, because it then turns out it's not just walk cycles. It's also, if you're having somebody in a movie do a sword slash, the way you do that has a lot of meaning as well, because if it's just wild swings, you do big arm movements with the arms straight and stuff like that. But then when it's controlled, it becomes these lovely dances, almost these choreographed movements. And that those two things give completely different read on a character based on the movement alone. So yeah, there's just so much to that question. How do I animate a human being?
Absolutely. But also, if you start at the school and you start animating, you're gonna be so self-aware about how you walk. I felt like John Cleese from Monty Python, just like, I have a severe form of city walking when I walked home from school that day. It was really just like, oh my god, am I walking like this? Right, and just like it's and you also taught us how to lift a heavy object, because you don't have physics when you're animating. You have to like
No.
try and convey, how do I make a box look heavy? And that was just like, really had to go into like, the spine of, and really just like, all right, how do I hold this object? How do I portray this with a character, right? Because I can either make him look like Superman holding it like with one finger, just like make the crate spin like it's a basketball, or I can make it look like there is like two elephants inside this box, but the computer not gonna know the difference.
No.
That's up to the animator itself to really convey that in a good way.
You don't have weight inside a computer. You can do physics and you can simulate weight, but that's not going to work very well with your animation, because your animation is these keys. These keys dictate where things are. So if you want something heavy, you got to animate something heavy. You got to really put that weight into it. Like when our barrel was landing, it crunches forward because there's a lot of force behind it. Its own weight is hitting its knees before it crunches in together. Yeah. All right, so I figured out what was bothering me with my animation, and it was actually that the landing was too slow, so going down was way, way, way too slow. So what I did is I took my end here, and instead of being on frame, what was it, 53, 54, I moved it down to frame 51. I even think I can move it one more. Let's see. You can see the land, that's too fast. The landing becomes a lot quicker now. It gets a lot more snap to it to hit the ground. And that's just gonna add that little bit of extra human movement to it. So we can even, that's a bit interesting. So here, where we land and slide, we could actually add a bit of rotation to it. So let's find our x-axis rotation. So we already have a key here. Let's see what happens when we move this. So you can see now it's like standing on its back leg, sliding. Don't want that. Want it to be a little bit, that's too much. Just need it to be just a slight bit, just like a little tilt forward for the slide. So we can even move the key a little bit. Just ever so slightly lean forward and then settling back. It's just going to add a little bit extra dynamic feel to it. It's not a lot. It's very subtle. Doink. But it gives our character a lot more dynamic movement and feel. And that's also like a lot of animation doesn't need to be big movements. A lot of it's just subtle, small things. And that's really going to sell it a lot more. I don't actually know if I have anything more. I got some really good notes today. Who would have thought? All right. Should we just jump straight into questions and answers, Kristen? Right.
Yeah, let's go for it. Comment section or the chat section is very quiet as right now, so they're probably knee deep into animating.
That's fine. Does anybody in the room have any questions? Because you guys are also here and you're also allowed to ask questions. It can both be about animation, about 3D, about the school. I know you've just listened to Adam and Christian. They've told you a bunch of things. But yeah, we are also here and available to answer things. It can also be about other things, but not everything I'm qualified to answer. But I'll give it a go.
But you can also ask what our favorite Star Wars movie is. But we can keep it lighthearted, or we can go heavy. It depends. Yeah. So yeah.
Yep. And if nobody has any questions here, I think we have a little special announcement, Christian.
Oh yeah. Hells yeah. Should I just stay over here, or should I come over and join?
You can come over here. It's your thing. So.
Ah, freaking cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just give the word to Christian.
All right. Cool. Just gonna maybe try and get into frame here. So the people who weren't here the last time, we throughout do this bootcamp, we do different aspects of within 3D. So that means today is animation. We have done sculpting, modeling, and texturing. Now, when we did sculpting, we were making a dragon. And should I go longer in? Oh, well, I don't think it's refreshed yet. It's still going quite slow. Oh, yeah. So we were making a dragon, and the audience had the opportunity to decide what kind of animal should we use. So it became a praying mantis and an owl. And so we made a dragon looking like that. Now, we told people that they could submit their dragon, and we would then 3D print it for the lucky winner. And we've now 3D printed it, and yes. You are amazing painter as well because you.
I'm okay.
Just take the damn compliment, Chelsea. But I was just gonna show quickly. So the person who won was named Hobie. I'm gonna show it over here. So
we're gonna send it around if people want to see it.
Yeah, we're gonna send it around. But to Hobie, who's probably sitting at home, this one's for you. And I'm gonna use it for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm gonna kill a lot of pure students with this one. So. Yeah, we are nerds here, so we play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and talk about Star Wars and the whole 9 yards. So, but yeah, Hobie, this one's for you. But we're gonna keep it.
Yeah, send it around, show people.
All right.
I love people to see. Yeah, and if it sounds like we're very nerdy in just like traditional nerdy aspects,
yes,
there are also people here who are movie nerds and just cinematography nerds and don't play a lot of computer, don't play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, but watch a lot of movies. There are, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. We have people who have knowledge about architecture, and that's sort of their jam. They want to get into this because of 3D visualization. You have simulation people. It's not as one-sided as me and Christian make it look. Me and Christian just have a lot of similar interests.
We can talk for hours.
Yes, we can. But there is a whole host of different people with every bit of interest around the world. They want to work in games, in movies, in 3D printing, in prototyping, in product design. And you can do it all with the things we teach and with the course we do, but we do try to teach you everything so that you have the opportunity to choose, not beforehand, but after you've gotten a bit of knowledge. I thought I was going to go into movies to start with, and, well, I'm teaching now, but I realized that games is actually the better place for me. That's a better fit. It's better workflow, and that's also why I know Unreal to the extent I do, where I can now teach in it and stuff like that.
But I think also what is quite important to let people know is that being a nerd is just being absolutely passionate about something, and it can be everything, everywhere. I'm about to say all at once. No, I'm not going to do it. But just we are extremely passionate out here, and it can be photography. It can, as you said, people are very much into whatever it can be. But the cool thing about this school is that everybody's included, and people can just talk for hours. You told me even at one point you were talking about the pattern on a turtle. There was like an absolute insane like discussion. Where was it for animation workshop at one point out in the city, where they was talking the entire evening about how you would make or model like the pattern or the turtle shield or something, and I was just like, that's amazing.
So that was a wonderful drunken evening with a bunch of 3D artists where you're talking about the pattern on turtle shells, which are called scoots, all those scales and stuff like that. Do you make them one at a time, or do you do them all at once? What would be the best? What would be the most efficient? All of these things. It's amazing to talk to these people because they will know things, and if they don't know things, they will look at it and go, oh, well, that's interesting. They'll start to analyze. They'll start to try and figure things out, and that's super interesting. And I've never met a 3D artist in any field that doesn't, one way or another, look at problems and think, oh, that's curious. That's interesting. How do we solve that? How do we make that? Because that becomes your life. It's how do you make things? One way or another, how do you animate that? How do you model that? How do you simulate that? How do you sculpt that? How do you, how do you light that?
But also when you go to the cinema, you go in and watch something like Avatar 2 now, it can more be like a little bit of nerve-wracking experience because you're thinking just like, oh god, am I going to do that in like 10 years?
Yeah.
Just the water.
So,
yeah. Any other questions for us? Animation is live.
Animation is live? Yeah, well, I was a bit quicker today than I used to. So, it wasn't as many questions. So, just to clarify, I usually plan these with half of it with time for questions because sometimes that's necessary, and if I don't plan that way, if there are a lot of questions, then we won't get half of it done. But other times you guys are so good and quick that I don't need to have that time. And that leaves me with this awkward time of silence. So yeah. Yeah.
We don't have anything from the chat other than people asking if we're going to Spilbar next Thursday. And if people who don't know,
that's next Thursday.
Yeah, at Cinematica. It's where they talk about the game industry and AI, or if that is an enemy or an ally, or.
Was that the theme for next time?
It's called Hype, Fear, and Loathing Generative AI in Video Games.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of people is actually going. So
I have to teach a class.
Next Thursday?
Yeah.
I thought we were done with Bootcamp.
We are. I need to teach Unreal to a different class.
Oh, but this one starts in what? I think it's like it's. Oh, okay. Oh, you poor soul. Yeah. It is right in your Unreal class.
Yep. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if no other questions, yeah. You guys all are. Oh, you have a question. Yes, lovely.
I saw that on your YouTube channel we can still preview the previous lives.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know for how long they will stay there.
For as long as YouTube is going to let us. We have done so many bootcamps before, and they're still up to this very day. So if you want to go back, you can also even rewatch some of the older ones where there's maybe a little bit of a remix. Let's say the Dragon, for example. We've done different versions or iterations of it. So if you don't feel like Owl and Praying Mantis is the same, you want to maybe try something out. There was a fox, was it an oxalot or?
Axolotl and deer.
Yeah, so if you want to try maybe that out, you're more than welcome to go back through the archives, but there should be plenty to go for.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as YouTube is letting us, they're not removing anything, because we had an issue back in the days with Twitch, where it was just like, oh, you can have it for like 7 to 14 days, then we just remove it. But we can keep it as long as we want on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a playlist here where I think it has everything 5 months ago, 4 months ago, yeah, so on and so forth. So yeah, it is possible to go back in case you feel like you missed something, or you just want to go back over it to see it again, to try it again, stuff like that. It's perfectly fine. It's a good idea. Repetition is king. Keep on repeating the same things until you don't need to listen to me anymore. You can just do it, and then you'll find that it becomes very easy to go freestyle from there. So that, yeah, rewatch to your heart's content.
But also, if people want, and they've just been joining here for animation, and you want to maybe try out the modeling and the texturing, we're doing bootcamp in June.
May.
No, May. Sorry.
May.
So in May. So if you want to like start from the very first, so week 1 where we go into modeling and then we go into sculpting and texturing, and you think this is cool, please just go in and sign up, or you can just come here to the school, and then we'll do. You can get help in physical. I mean, we're here. So if you have any questions or need help,
yeah, it's. I also think there's an important credit to give that these boot camps are actually student planned. I might be the person here teaching, but the students are actually the ones planning it and making sure everything runs smoothly and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's cool.
Yep. All right. Well, if there is nothing from the online people, I think we should let them go home. And then for you here, we promised you until 8. We will be here, and you can just ask any question you want, and we will answer them and stuff like that. We are here to help. We are here to help as much as possible. And then, yeah. So, all right. Bye-bye to people at home. I will see you in a month.